Okay, let's move on to our story before midnight now. And Boris Johnson announced today that we're still very much on track to get back to the pub on April the 12th and for lockdown restrictions to continue to ease as planned. But while we're all looking forward to getting back to seeing our friends, quite a few people are feeling anxious about a return to post-lockdown normal social lives. Well, a survey by the American Psychological Association revealed that nearly 50% of adults reported feeling uncomfortable about returning to in-person interaction when the pandemic ends. Joining me now is Zahira Jazza. She is a lecturer in organisational behaviour at the University of Sussex Business School, and life coach Rakish Rana as well joins us. Rakish, let's go to you first.
Hello, Kate.
Hello, how are you? All right.
I'm very well, thank you.
So, people are feeling a bit anxious, I suppose, about diaries filling up again, and also the sense of sort of having to perform, dare I say it, having to be social again.
Exactly. I think, it took its toll when people, when we first went into lockdown and people went through that grief element, getting used to things, and they realised that they have that freedom, they have that no pressure on them, really. But now with this lockdown easing, it's that pressure is going to come back. And I think that fear and anxiety is starting to rise up. So you're right, it is going to be that the social acting out and not being used to it. And I think that's giving rise to some anxiety.
Do you think people should be careful about how much they book in, Rakish?
Oh, very much so. I think it is about planning and also accepting that we're all different, and just because others may seem to be rushing ahead and filling their diaries, it doesn't mean that you have to. It's about taking your time and doing what's right for you, and I think that's going to be key. We all live in this world of FOMO and watching what everybody else is doing, whether it's through social media or through TV or whatever it is. But it's about being reflective and actually having this time during lockdown. I'm really hoping people have learned to be more self-aware. And now it's about using that self-awareness to really see what's right for you, and rather than just pushing ahead.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got the expectation of friends, I suppose, to just automatically loop you in. Zahira Jazza, welcome to you. Tell us about the psychology. Hello. Tell us about the psychology behind why we might be feeling nervous about returning to see our friends and colleagues in person.
Well, it's, in preparing for this program, I actually realized there is a big paradox about going back to work. So we know that 1 in 4 people in Britain feels lonely, and especially during COVID, and anxious. 1 in 5 even hopeless. And so it's a very difficult situation where people are coming from to go to work. On the other hand, so people are lonely at home, but on the other hand, there are so many boundaries to cross to go back to work. There are psychological work-related distresses, like, people have actually been in fear of redundancies. People have not necessarily had a calm and serene relationship with their job. Some people have been in furlough, so they're really dealing with changing pattern of work. What does it mean going back to work? So people would like to go back, but they find it difficult to go back. So people are a little bit trapped in this anxiety of wanting to go back to a normal which doesn't exist anymore. And so from that perspective, this creates a lot of stress and anxiety. There are also real... Sorry.
Go on.
No, there are also real concerns due to financial pressures, right? So people's financial situations are very fluid, and we know that this creates a lot of stress for people, and emotional reactions. So the uncertainty of not knowing how other co-workers will react to the danger of the virus. Will everyone be as cautious as us? Frustrations, discomfort, issues with childcare, leaving the children behind, leaving the home that we have been so used to being in.
So there's lots to be anxious about, Zahira, and it's almost like the anxiety of being at home and facing loneliness is on one side of it, and as you're explaining, on the other side of it, there is the anxiety about going back to work, which you referenced,
exactly.
But also the anxiety of getting out there again within social situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and losing kind of the control that we've had about meeting others, right? So far, we've had enormous control about, switching off the screen, hiding when you don't want to speak to others. Now we have to go back into work. So it depends on, who you are. And this is going to have a different impact on different people beyond the difficulties I've just spoken about. For example, maybe extroverted would be much easier to go back. And some introverted, we know some introverted and some people that have different kind of learning abilities and working abilities. I found it actually very, very nice to stay at home. So we shouldn't really think that for everyone this is a nice thing to do.
Dr. Rakish Rana, let's talk about relationships. It is possible, isn't it, that we may have, during the pandemic, used that as an excuse to distance ourselves from people in our lives that we weren't so keen on. Perhaps it was a bit fortuitous to that extent, that we didn't have to hang out with that particular person the whole time. Or was it a good excuse to kind of drop that slightly but tedious friend? We then, as we emerge, going to have to stop avoiding people, I suppose, because there will be invites and there will be obligations. How do we get around that?
It is, and I think this was something, let's say pre-COVID, when we ran all these busy lives, and there was this big buzz about learning to say no. And I think that's something that we need to empower ourselves with now going forward. It is learning to say no. And I guess I go back to it. It's being more self-aware and understanding what's going to be of benefit to us. And too often we just jump the gun and say, yes, we'll go out, and we fill our diary. And realistically, it's going to be, is it beneficial for me? Is this going to help me? And I think it's given time to people really reassess their relationships that they've had with, friends, acquaintances, family members even. And it might have really made them decide, well, actually, when lockdown does ease and I've got the time, the people that really matter are the people that I'm going to give my time to.
How do we say no, though, Rakish? How do we do that gently, nicely?
It's courage. It is normally it's about letting people down and actually saying, well, if you've got something else going on, or just not being able to make it, and there's so what. It's only so many times you can say no, but it's about being courageous. It's possibly being courageous and brave enough to have those conversations with people. I'm not saying it's easy, but it comes with practice, and eventually people do move on. I think also what you'll find is where people have kind of drifted apart, there may not be an inclination to come back again either, because things have moved far apart. What you find is that you've developed relationships with certain other people that you're now looking forward to meeting. And this just happens in the natural course of life anyway. As we grow, we meet people, we grow fond of them, and we grow apart, we meet other people. It's a general course of life.
How many acquaintances we all have, actually. We did speak to someone about this months and months ago now, about how big our friendship groups are, and they're much bigger than we think they are. Zahira, let's sort of bring you back into this in terms of organisational behaviour. We are all, of course, allowed freedoms, but we're going to have to toe the line. And probably all of us know someone that we love dearly, but who doesn't toe the line, who doesn't fit perhaps the kind of rule-following framework that we do. How do we deal with someone who goes a bit rogue like that?
Rogue is subjective.
Yes,
what is rogue for me is not rogue for you. So I think that the name of the game here is really flexibility and empathy. So, I do study managers, and I have been interviewing and speaking with a lot of managers during this COVID pandemic. I also have a manager, so I'm also working in an organization. And so I think that really what people need to do is to allow a little bit of slack here. Rigidity does not work well with this psychological situation in which we are, and with the many difficulties that we are crossing.
Okay, so we need to be a little bit kind to each other and a little bit gentle.
And allow flexibility, absolutely, and empathy.
Great advice. Thank you very much. That was the voice of Zahira Jassa. She's a lecturer in organisational behaviour at the University of Sussex Business School, and the Clear coach, Dr. Rakish Rana, life coach, also joining us for that as well, as we get used to being social again after lockdown. Thanks both of you for joining us.